What is going on, guys? Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today what I wanted to do was go through the Jets draft class as a whole and try to give it a grade. It's something that we've done in podcasting before, but that was when Just Jets was on Mondays in the offseason. We're keeping it just at Wednesdays. I like Just Jets Wednesdays. Those are much more fun for me. Anyway, moral of the story is I wanted to go through and give a grade. Now, it is important to note that, yes, the grade 2 to 3 years down the line is significantly more important, but I think it's interesting to go through and give your thought and grade, if you wish, on or with, I guess, the context of how you felt at the time and compare the two. I like the comparison aspect more than like this is the grade and like that's it. I don't necessarily like the, oh, it's meaningless take, and I don't think this is like, the Bible by any stretch of the imagination, where it's, whatever your take is on this draft goes as is. Again, I think it's interesting for a comparison tool. So we'll go through the Jets picks. They ended up with 7, and we'll slap a grade on at the end and see if you agree. And I want to hear from you down in the comments what you guys would grade. So Will McDonald first at pick 15. The Jets famously moved back from 13 to 15 to land Aaron Rodgers. In the process, no edge rushers on the board. Most think Kalaji Kancey or JSN would be the pick. Instead, they go Will McDonald, which was definitely a shock. And for me, this was not my favorite move of the draft. I understand why they went this direction. Again, Robert Saleh loves his speedy edge rushers. They are going to have a much bigger hole at that position after this upcoming year. I just don't think we're going to see a ton of him. Maybe he gets home on third downs and ends up being a really nice situational pass rusher, but a situational pass rusher in the top 15 in year one when you're in a win now window. Again, I don't hate the pick. I think it's an okay pick, but it wasn't my favorite route at that option. So don't necessarily love that one. And keeping that in mind with the end and final grade here. Joe Tippmann, I think, was my favorite pick in the draft, the center in the second round out of Wisconsin. I do think he has a legitimate chance to play right away and start for this team at center. Yes, they brought back Connor McGovern, but it's for essentially peanuts, pennies on the dollar, less than $2 million a year, which is nuts. And Tippmann, I think, has a chance to be a decade plus long starter. And that's not to say that McDonald in front of him can't be a good player as well. I like the comparison that Green Bean brought up during the draft for McDonald. I know we're backtracking here, but I'm just talking through the whole draft, so it'll make sense. But I liked the comparison that he made to when the Jets drafted Brian Thomas. Not that Will McDonald is necessarily a similar player to Brian Thomas, but he might just end up being like a steady, solid player, and just not the direction that the fans at the time necessarily wanted to go, which again is okay. And you want to get productive bodies in here. But for Tippmann, I love it. Again, I wanted a center really badly. Joe Tippmann, I think, was center 3 for me. He ended up being the first center off the board over John Michael Schmitz. We'll see how that ends up playing out, but Tippmann probably a better scheme fit for the Jets. He is a little bit on the bigger side, or at least in terms of height. 6'6" for a center is pretty rare. But I really like the kid. I think he's going to play and be pretty productive from day one. Day 3 was interesting. We saw the Jets on day 3 go for athletes. First up, Carter Warren, offensive tackle out of Pittsburgh. To me, this is a depth pick. You're not going to draft someone in the 4th round and expect them to start especially at the tackle position. But adding depth at a spot where they suffered numerous injuries. And he's a projected developmental guy, kind of like Max Mitchell. I know Mitchell ended up playing as a rookie and played okay, but he was probably never expected to play right away. I think the plan was to develop him over time. Same kind of thing here from Warren. He played a lot on the right side. I think he can develop into a right tackle at some point. I like adding depth. Again, is it a sexy, flashy pick? No, but in the 4th round, finding a guy who you feel comfortable with, who you can develop, I think is a good thing. Then in the 5th round, they go Israel Abanikanda, the running back out of Pittsburgh. It's going to take me a million tries to get that name right. It's too many syllables in the last name. We'll get it. He is really explosive, and Joe Douglas loves drafting running backs. He did it every single year he's drafted from 2020 through 2023. a little scary for Michael Carter, who took a step back in year two. I liked what I saw from him as a rookie and was hoping he'd, take that next step, but really, unfortunately, did not. He struggled mightily down the stretch, and yeah, he was a little bit banged up, but I think it adds competition, and there's nothing wrong with that when you're, again, looking to compete. We see guys on day three, late day two, at the running back position come in and have success. This guy had 20 touchdowns last year. Granted, it was for Pitt, and it's like not, doing that in that conference versus the SEC is a little different. But moral of the story is I think this guy is a speedster, home run hitter, has return ability as well. Not great out of the backfield as, someone catching the ball, but I like adding the competition there on the offensive side of the ball. I think he, outside of Tippmann, this would probably be my second favorite pick for the Jets. I think he has a real shot to be RB2 or 3 this year. He'll get some touches, that's for sure. Then we go Zaire Barnes at linebacker, Western Michigan. I think this is mostly a special team play. Again, when you get in the 6th and 7th round, they're really dart throws, but special teams upside, athletic linebacker with speed. Do I think he's going to be linebacker 3? No, I don't. I think Jamie Sherwood would be ahead of him. I do think the Jets bring back Quan Alexander, which would be wise after how this board kind of played. But Barnes, an athletic special teamer on day 6. Again, a dart throw at a special teamer, which is what you're going to get at this point in the NFL draft. So not a whole lot on that one. Then they go safety in the 6th round, Jarek Bernard-Converse out of LSU, converted to safety. Are we surprised? But again, really good athlete. I don't know if he's going to come in and start. So I don't love the Jets waiting this long to get a safety and really running it back with Chuck Clark not running it back with Chuck Clark. They bring in Chuck Clark, but they're running it back with Jordan Whitehead, and the Whitehead and Clark 1-2 punch. They are both very similar stylistically. Maybe they're higher on Tody Adams than the rest of us, or they're just going to find a different safety in a different spot that we're not anticipating right now. Don't mind the pick. Again, athlete. They're going to go and draft athletes. That's what Joe Douglas does, especially on day 3. But yeah, didn't love waiting and not really attacking that safety position a little bit on the earlier side. And last but certainly not least, Zach Kuntz, who is the definition of upside. He's tight end, wide receiver, really more of a big wide receiver than a pure tight end, but a big slot. Crazy athlete, great speed for his size. That's a project, but an interesting project for the New York Jets in the 7th round. So what I found really interesting about this Jets draft class was the varying views on it. You had people that loved it and you had people that hated it. And while doing my research for this, we've come across, I've seen grades as low as D coming from the Sporting News and grades as high as A- coming from USA Today. But the New York Post gave it a C. NFL.com gave it a B, PFF gave it a B-, The Ringer gave it a C-. So grades all over the board for the New York Jets in varying opinions. I think it was overall, getting to the grading portion of this, I think it was an okay draft for the New York Jets. Obviously last year you had splashy names, you had a lot more picks at the top. So that graded out much higher. I gave last year's draft class an A, and that one turned out to be a tremendous draft class for the New York Jets. Hard to replicate, hard to repeat. I don't know if they're going to have anyone who's competing for an offensive or defensive rookie of the year, but I think it was solid in filling out some depth. So I'm going to go B-, something in the middle. I think it was, again, an okay draft. You could sell me on a B, but that B+ to A range I think is too optimistic, and C or lower I think is a little too harsh. C+, B- I think is fair for this one. I'm a little bit more on the optimistic side with this draft class because of the athletic upside on a lot of these guys, so that's why I lean B- over C+. But that's where I fall. I want to see where you fall on your draft grade for this Jets draft class. Sound off below. I'm Matt O'Leary. I'll catch you next time.